Tiger uppercut!
Banaku!
You got knocked the out.
If knock the out was a sport, it would be Dambe. Dambe is one of the oldest, most vicious, and entertaining martial art, bar none. If you ever decide to do Dambe, because you might need someone to pick your ass up off the floor. Welcome to the Black Martial Arts Society, and today we're taking a trip to Hausa Land, Nigeria, to explore the legacy and history of Dambe and its influence on modern boxing. But first, smash that like button, subscribe, and share the video. Dambe is the traditional martial art of the Bahayushaya, or Hausa people of Nigeria. It was largely practiced by butchers and the fishermen caste groups, but it was also used as a military discipline to prepare men for war, with much of its techniques names alluding to warfare. Like most African martial arts, including wrestling, there is a spiritual, religious, cultural aspect to it, as it was done during the harvest festivals, which was accompanied by much ceremony, rituals, and dancing, and drumming. Only a specific caste of Hausa people were permitted to ritualistically slaughter the animals and handle the meat, especially in preparation for the festivals. As such, a tradition of traveling butchers developed who would go from village to village to slaughter their animals. These butchers eventually formed boxing teams for entertainment called armies and would perform boxing matches even with the audience members from different villages. This was done during the harvest festival, and at this time there would be an influx of money, and as such, gambling on events like boxing became common. Even still to this day, Dambe warriors travel throughout Hausa land, from Nigeria to Chad to southern Niger, to perform Dambe bouts. These Dambe warriors became known as Attire. Not sure if I pronounced that right. Attire. In the early days of Dambe, fighters wore loincloth, but in the present day, you'll find a variety of pants and shorts, whatever the fighter likes to wear. Much like in Muay Thai, they wrap their hands in rope. However, unlike Muay Thai, they only wrap one hand, and they wrap the entire hand, including the fingers, into a ball, so the hand becomes like a club. In the ancient days of Dambe, fighters would dip their rope in a sticky resin mixed with glass. Although this practice has been discontinued in modern day. Since the ancient days of Dambe, charms and amulets have been used for spiritual protection and luck. This practice still extends to the modern day. However, some officials are against the use of charms, as they feel it's unfair to use magical protection. I mean, they kind of got a point. Can you imagine going into a fight and one guy's got magic protecting him? Like, you're bound to get your ass kicked. That's just inevitable. Some fighters put their charms into their wraps, while others will go as far as scarring themselves and putting salves and different herbs into the wound. But most commonly, which real niggas can relate to, they blow it down before they throw down. They flame trees before they flame their opponents. Yes, indeed, Dambe warriors, from ancient days till now, often practice the ritualistic smoking of marijuana before and after fights. Mike Tyson approves. Ring. The ring in Dambe is called the battlefield. In local matches, a ring is formed by spectators gathering around to make the boundaries. But for Dambe tournaments, the ring used is a circular sandpit, the same as the one used in traditional African wrestling. Dambe bouts would often be followed by wrestling tournaments, so it made sense to just use the same pit. Rules. Although there aren't any official weight classes, competitors are matched by size. Matches are typically 3 rounds with no time limit. Each round instead ends when there's no activity, a participant or an official calls for a halt, or when an opponent hits the ground with either their hands, body, or knees. This is called killing your opponent. And there may be one or several referees. Often you may see a new competitor jump in when the winner kills his opponent. And this is part of the fun. I'm not sure if they do this in other boxing gyms, but when I trained with a group of African boxers who brought me up in boxing, this was their method. This was the method they employed for sparring. One man would stay in the ring and face everybody till he was beaten or he gave up. Lastly, punches as well as kicks are allowed, and depending on the region, also wrestling. Technique. Dambe's fighting style can best be described as a warrior carrying a shield and a spear. And this is reflected in the names of their hands. The lead hand is referred to as the shield and is held open and used for defense as well as grabbing, while the rear hand is called the spear hand and is used for offense. This is the hand that will be wrapped up in rope. This style is elementary and simplistic in its philosophy. Defense first. Indeed, Dambe mimics warfare in this manner. Stance. There are a variety of stances in Dambe, and they're as unique as the individual. But generally, the shield hand is extended and open, while the spear hand is held at the waist cocked, which kind of reminds me a bit of karate. The feet are usually wide, with knees bent, planting them into the ground. This stance is also reminiscent of other boxing stances we see nowadays. Technique. The most common technique in Dambe is obviously punching. And the most common punches you'll see is the straight spear, also the looping overhand. You'll often see the uppercut and rear hook, and back fists, as well as hammer fists and windmills. Technically, there's no rule against using your shield for offense, and you can grab your opponent and hold him in place to hit him. The shield hand can be used similar to the way a pawing jab is used, to pull down your opponent's defense and open him up for offense. Although it's called boxing, kicks are allowed, and so are elbows and knees, and sometimes it's even mixed in with wrestling. However, the style is largely boxing based, and only occasionally are kicks and grappling added when agreed on. But this does make Dambe technically an early form of MMA. Ancient ancestors. Dambe was codified in the 10th century, but it is arguably much older than that. The ancestors of the Hausa people before migrating to Nigeria, Niger, and Chad, are believed to have originated in Northeast Africa, with their maternal DNA being linked to Western Asia. When we examine these areas of the world, we find the most ancient history of boxing. We also find some parallels between their boxing styles and aspects of Dambe that we can establish a bit of a cultural link. These include the drums. Throughout Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Nubia, we find that when they box and wrestle, they do it to the drums, not just as an intro, but they play while they fight. Clothing. Dambe used to be done in loincloth. Like all three of these civilizations, they boxed in loincloth, which is a marked difference between Afro-Asiatic civilizations' combat sports and that of Greco-Roman combat sports, who favored doing it naked.
Gay!
And lastly, some of the stances shown in Egyptian boxing, and even the statues of Nubians boxing, does kind of remind me of Dambe. But that's just me. Although this is likely what their ancestors would have practiced, Dambe as we know it is a martial art unique to the Hausa people. Contributions to boxing. Although modern boxing is nothing like Dambe, it is inconceivable that Dambe warriors did not fight in prize fighting, the ancestor of modern boxing. Hausas account for a large percentage of Africans in the diaspora, from the Americas to the Caribbean, even in Europe. Dambe has been a part of the Hausa culture for at least 1,000 years. Prize fighting began with slave fights, and many enslaved Africans in the West participated in slave fights, and they used their native martial arts. Undoubtedly, there are many Hausa people participating in these slave fights who utilize Dambe or aspects of Dambe in the Americas. Perhaps this is the origin of this stance, or the pawing jab. If we look at how Deontay Wilder fights, it reminds me a lot of Dambe. Perhaps it's genetically in him to fight like a Hausa Nigerian. Lastly, although I said Dambe doesn't have any official weight classes, rounds, or time, that's only in regards to freestyle Dambe. Because there's actually a few legitimate Dambe boxing leagues, such as Dambe Warriors. So if you're ready to take your striking game to the next level, then visit us at thefocusballs.com and get yourself a set of focus balls and dramatically improve footwork, timing, reflex, hand-eye coordination, and overall striking technique. Train every time, everywhere with the Focus Ball.